This was the sidewalk that we used to ride Speedway. We used to have our bicycles and we used to ride Speedway as a kid. And this is where I learned how to turn the Speedway bike right here. And it was a nice place. We had good memories here in this house. And we just had a good time. We hung out as kids and we just had lots of fun here at the BELISLE's house. We used to hang out right back there and we'd go in the pool. We'd ride our bicycles off the roof into the pool. It was crazy time. Paul was married to his beloved wife, Eileen, for some 35 years. And on my last trip to America, when I was racing Speedway, I got a chance to meet Eileen and talk to her. She's a wonderful woman, and she was very loyal and loving to her husband, Paul BELISLE. Paul and Eileen were talking about going to dinner the Friday night before his passing. And he wanted to eat some barbecue spare ribs. You know, Paul just loved the beef barbecue spare ribs. And he was in the shower. They were going to go out to dinner. And he was in the shower. And then he got out of the shower. And he complained to his wife, Eileen, that his neck was sore to his spine. And he just didn't feel good. And they went ahead and went out to dinner anyways. And that was the first sign that something was wrong with Paul. And then Paul was complaining that his chest hurt. And Eileen immediately called the 911 and got the ambulance to the house and took Paul to the ER for 5 hours. They examined Paul. They checked him out. They did a series of tests. And there was no negative things on the test. So they released Paul and he went home for the night. The next day, Paul went to his primary doctor and he had a checkup. And the doctor, I think, probably didn't see a lot, and so he gave Paul some medicine, some painkillers, and sent him home, and that's what happened the next day. It was Friday, October 27th, 2017. Paul complained of chest pains, and immediately they rushed Paul to the hospital to have him checked out, and Eileen was waiting for Paul, and that's when Paul had passed away. At age 60, Paul was gone. Rest in peace, Paul BELISLE. Paul was very thin. He was only 155 pounds, and he had spent 5 years as a reserve fighter for the fire department in Temecula. And Paul was one of the coolest dudes you could meet. I think most of the people in the Speedway world know Paul BELISLE because of the restaurant, the BELISLE's restaurant. I even talked to Bruce Penhall, and he said, yeah, I know Paul. Paul was a very well-liked person because he was a good guy. He wasn't the most competitive Speedway rider of all of them, but he was certainly the nicest of them all. I met Paul when I was just a young boy. I went to the OCIR to watch motocross TT races, and I heard his name as one of the racers in that event. And I'm like, I think that guy goes to my school. I believe it was McPherson Junior High at the time. And I was walking the next day down the hall, and there was Paul BELISLE walking at me. And I said, excuse me. He didn't know me. He was a year or two older than me. And I said, I was at the OCR last night, and I watched you race. And was that you? And he goes, oh, yeah, I was racing. And I said, oh, wow, that was so cool. And I'd like to get to know you and stuff like that. And Paul's like, yeah, no problem. Paul was so nice. He was so cool, even as a teenager. And he said, come over to my house and let's get to hang out and get to know each other. So I came over to the BELISLE's house, and that's where it all started. So many events happened, from meeting Sumner McKnight. His sister dated him for a while, and we were racing at the El Medina track, to jumping off the house with bicycles, almost killing ourselves doing that. And all these cool things that happened with Paul. And he's the one who basically introduced me to Speedway. I had lost touch for many years, and I tried getting in touch with him, finding Paul. And when I had found him, I talked to his wife, and he had already passed away. So I'm very sad that I wasn't able to connect with Paul as an adult as much as I would have liked to. Many people were shocked, and the outpouring of love for Paul was just amazing. I realized that Paul had many people who truly and deeply loved him. Childhood days of Paul BELISLE. as he inspired me to race motorcycles. One day I was walking home from school from Elmo, and a green truck drove by me, and it was Paul Belisle in his brand new Jeep pickup truck. And in the back of his pickup truck was a brand new Jawa Speedway bike. A brand new Jawa Speedway bike. And my heart just melted. And I looked at the bike, looked at Paul's pickup truck, and I just like melted. I've got to have one of those. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, Paul Belisle's got a Speedway bike and I don't have a Speedway bike. Paul totally inspired me to get a Speedway bike, but I was like wondering, where am I gonna get a Speedway bike? I only have like $1,000 saved from the paper route. And then finally I saw a Speedway bike for sale. And I was like, oh my gosh, and it was only $700. So I called the guy, and it was Danny Bezerko Becker. Danny Bezerko Becker. And Danny was selling this bike. Paul had a great childhood days, and he just was a happy-go-lucky guy. Paul had a great childhood, and he was a motorcycle rider. Paul just loved motorcycles, and he was a big inspiration to me also. We talked about jumping off the roof with the bicycles into the water. So Paul just had a great place. He had a great home, and they lived there for like 25 years. I think it was 1981 they ended up moving, and also Belisle's restaurant ended up closing around that time also. But it was bought by the city of Garden Grove. I'm the king of cool. After Speedway, Paul fell in love with horses. He was doing all kinds of horse things. He was showing very expensive horses for his family. He was doing rodeo riding. He was even riding the bull. He was also a very gifted oil painter. He did a lot of painting for his bicycle helmets. He was a mountain bike rider, and he painted all those helmets. Paul Belisle was a cool dude. He was an amazing person, and age 60 is just too young for his passing. And he has such a great family still. His beloved wife, Eileen, she's so loyal and good, and she just is still so much in love with Paul. That's true love, and I really appreciate that. And she's a great woman. And the Belisle family, they did so many great things in Orange County through the years with the Belisle's restaurant and stuff. And Paul was just an amazing kid. We have a lot of experiences together. I have a lot more stories. But thank you so much for listening to the story of Paul Belisle. He was an amazing human being. He was a good guy and passed away far too young. Thank you so much. And rest in peace to the Belisle family, Paul Belisle. And we appreciate you for watching this show on one of my special friends. And his name is Paul Belisle.